So, I came across this a couple days ago, and if you're not already familiar with what's been going on with Congress, with the government coming out and admitting that they have aliens, that they have recovered UFO, non-terrestrial UFOs. David Grousch is the guy who blew the whistle on this. And he did an interview with Tucker Carlson where he expressed what he was talking about with his concerns with the threat to his life, right? The risk that he's taking in coming out. And after watching the interview, I couldn't help but notice the similarities in the tactics and the similarities in some of the things that targeted individuals go through, right? Now, I believe I was targeted because I was blowing the whistle. I was speaking out about corruption, about a certain chief of police being corrupt, a couple of them actually. And what do you know? I mean, the tactics are all the same. So I just wonder if anybody else has these same, sees the similarities that I see. So this video is, like I said, this is the interview from Tucker Carlson and David Grousch. I'll leave a link in the description for the original video if you want to go check it out. But I'm going to play the whole video. So let me know what you think about it, and we'll go from there. So here it is.
There were concerns, like I stated during the hearing, of people that have espoused that to me. And of course, I brought some of those officers to the Inspector General, the Intelligence Community Inspector General, because I'm like, this is serious. And I'm like, here's the law enforcement people you want to talk to, because I'm hands off. If that's true, you need to look into it. But
the allegation was...
yes, and then physical harm. And I will say, well, I won't get into the specifics because it's part of my open investigation, besides the administrative stuff. And I don't know, it's an unknown entity to me. I do not know who did this, but their displeasure in me was made known in my personal life, and that, it affected my wife and I had to report that to a certain counterintelligence element and a certain law enforcement element, because right before I filed my whistleblower complaint, I felt that my life was in jeopardy, and that's what I was alluding to during the hearing, because, we'll just say when you come home and you see something, you made somebody unhappy. And to this day, I don't know who it was. I don't think it was a foreign entity, but there is some element that I extremely angered, and I don't say that flippantly. I said it very seriously because I thought my life was in danger.
You can't get into details because it's part of the investigation.
It's part of the investigation. At some point, I'm happy to talk about it publicly. And also, as they say in the intelligence business, you don't acknowledge your tail. So I don't want to acknowledge some other things I've noticed that maybe
but it sounds like
supposed to be known.
You believe you've been surveilled and threatened.
Oh, 100%. It was obvious to me. And,
100%.
I mean, it was blatant, we'll just say, what I observed. And it was so concerning. I ended up reporting it to the authorities. And I asked my agency for certain protective measures. I can't get into that detail. But I was certainly petrified. And at the same time that those things were happening to me personally, they were happening at the same time to a certain other public figure that is known to the world, we'll just say, and another former intelligence officer near my home as well. And it was some kind of planned multi-person intimidation activity that was very disturbing. And I'll just leave it at that. But so I'm not doing this for fun. I'm serious. I'm doing this interview because this is protective for me. I don't want to be anonymous.
Of course.
So I'm not here for attention. This is a nightmare to even be public.
Right.
I'm used to working in a vault and briefing generals. This is not me. I'm not a public communicator, although I'm trying. And that's why I'm doing it.
You're a very good communicator.
Well, I appreciate it. But this is a serious subject with serious consequences, and I suffered a lot of serious consequences.
So as you know, you've totally convinced me of your sincerity. There was a lot of whispering about your motives. This is an op. Why now? Why are we learning all this now?
People think that I'm a part of some CIA psyop or something like that. First of all, I've never signed any kind of paperwork to be a part of an operation in that regard. Unfortunately, there isn't a plan. I'm not a part of a plan. I ended up becoming a leader of a faction of former government officials and current government officials that would like change in a legal way. And, I encourage, if there are people watching that have participated in those programs, there are multiple legal avenues, such as going to the ARROW office, going through the ICIG like I did, Intelligence Community Inspector General, or another cognizant Inspectors General to legally provide this information.
And there are also illegal but morally defensible avenues, like coming on this show, and I'd be delighted to host anyone who wants to tell the truth about what he's seen. And there's no justification for hiding this. That's my evaluation, so I'd be happy to take that risk, to have that person on. But it sounds like so given your own experience, when people say to you, U.S. government employees say to you, wow, someone was by the U.S. government for talking about this or planning to talk about it, it sounds like you would have to take those claims seriously.
I did, and I remember a very, very credible senior intelligence officer precisely make those allegations in front of senior officials on Capitol Hill. I was in the room.
Elected officials?
Their staff, I'll just say. I don't want to get into details.
That's crazy. I mean, so it's like, at that point, if somebody says the U.S. government, an American citizen without a trial, because he was going to tell the truth about something, that's kind of when everything stops. You can't have that in a free country.
I mean, I think people are just paralyzed in fear because that's a reality. And I remember the certain professional staff members being very upset in the room. And I mean, they're rightly so, but like, we need to do something about that because that's not good. And most of the people that even I interviewed, I'm like, do you want to go to the Inspector General with me? And they're like, we'll back you up, but we don't want our name on any complaints, because they were just living in fear.
So, like, for my whole life, I'd never even thought UFOs were real until fairly recently.
Me either. 4 years ago, if you asked me 4 or 5 years ago if I thought UFOs were real, I would have laughed.
I completely agree. But the conventional explanation for the U.S. government, among those who believed it was hiding these facts, the explanation for why was the government doesn't want to sow panic, doesn't want to admit weakness in the face of its adversaries, et cetera, et cetera. Those explanations do not account for the behavior you're describing.
Yeah,
they're hiding something real that implicates them. And if they're talking to these entities, whatever they are, and I believe on the basis of evidence that the U.S. government has made contact and has had continuous, or at least sporadic, but over a period of years contact, you don't need to nod or shake your head, but that is my belief based on talking to people. Like, what is that?
Yeah, if there's certainly, a relationship that was cultivated with non-human intelligences, hypothetically, I guess, to play off of what you just said, good or bad, it's almost like that's nature, that's life, yin and yang of the universe. If there's malevolent non-human intelligences, okay, well, that's a fact of life. You don't hide it, because what if the U.S. populace needs to be prepared for something
well,
hypothetically?
And it's also not their right to hide it, because they don't own the government. The public does, actually.
Right.
Exactly. And it's just, I understand the reasons at first, but like you said, I think it's just the moral decay and the decay in leadership. And once again, well, we don't want to admit we did all this stuff years ago.
But also, if the U.S. government has had contact with these entities, and again, it is my informed belief that the U.S. government has had contact, what are they talking about? What is that?
Hey, I would like to know too. I mean, I grew up watching Star Trek, so I mean, I say that kind of, whimsically, but like, well, great. I mean, of my generation under 40, that's like, we're not shocked. That's cool. Like a Gen Zer who's 18 would want to study physics if they found out this stuff was real.
Yes.
Like, this is how you boost STEM in this country, for goodness sakes. I mean, this is like the most exciting, yes, a little scary, but overall it's exciting. I mean, nothing's happened. We're still living. I'm able to talk about this and nothing's happening, to the world, if you will. So I think it's exciting for young people, and I think it's the right time to do this.
Going back in history, I mean, there are all sorts of mysteries about history that we, just can't explain even now. But it sounds like it would not be surprising to learn that people 3,000 years ago had contact with these.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the works of Jacques Vallée, a famous researcher. His character was portrayed as the French character in Close Encounters of the Third Kind by Steven Spielberg. That guy exists. His name is Jacques Vallée, and he has a PhD, and he's a smart scientist, but looked at this, and there's a couple books, like Passport to Mongolia and some other stuff, I'm probably butchering the name, where he looked into antiquity, this phenomenon. So when people say, oh, it's probably adversarial technology, etc., we've been seeing the same stuff since antiquity. And this should also potentially enforce stories in theological texts, say the Bible or whatever, that people actually saw Ezekiel's wheels, as
right.
Tim Burchett has espoused publicly. Maybe that actually happened. Now, unfortunately, you're bursting maybe a worldview or a bubble for some people, but it actually ultimately it might enforce people's belief systems, because stories in the religious text weren't fable, allegory, or whatever. They happened. And I'm not saying all of them did, but there might be evidence if we were openly and honestly studying the subject in more detail.
Amazing. Last question, small question, but there's clearly some connection between nuclear weapons, nuclear energy, and the sightings of these things. I mean, they've been seen around the U.S. military installations with nuclear. So what is that?
Yeah, you wonder if the nuclear testing was almost like a beacon. You know, anybody observing from far distance, like, whoa, the monkey has discovered 10 to the 6 tons of TNT energy extraction. They're close. Maybe they're only an order of magnitude away of energy extraction to develop technology that maybe they have, hypothetically.
Right.
And it might have been just like a lighthouse. We turned it on, and now they became more interested. And it might be also a symptom of what we call collection bias, where modern society, we were more calibrated to look for that kind of stuff because there was like sci-fi movies in the 30s and 40s, and maybe people were looking up more maybe. But certainly there is some kind of nuclear connection. What does it mean? I don't know. They're obviously performing some kind of reconnaissance and surveillance of us as it relates to not only our nuclear weapons and nuclear facilities. If anybody wants to read a book called UFOs and Nukes by Robert Hastings, he spent 40 plus years looking at interviewing Air Force missileers, other credible witnesses, and very famous incident in 1967, Bob Salas, right?
Shut down the base.
Shut down the nukes. And we should take those observers seriously. They're trained, they have clearances, they have their jobs on the line, lying in that regard. And so there is a nuclear connection. I encourage people to read that book, but what does it mean? I don't even know. No idea.
Well, you're a brave man, and I'll be honest, I didn't know what to think because there's a lot of whispering about you, but I think you're totally sincere.
So what do you think? I mean, I can't help but, I'm schizophrenics see patterns where patterns don't exist, okay? But what do you make of the patterns where patterns do exist, right? I promise I'm not schizophrenic, and I'm not the only one that's seeing this. There's a clear connection. It's like it's all fucking connected somehow. But that's just my take on it. What do you think? I'd be interested to hear what you have to say in the comments. So be good or be good at it. Peace.